Hello, bonjour, здравствуйте, assalamu alaikum, guten tag, ni hao, konnichiwa, hola, hello, welcome to the Knitters Party podcast. My name is Megan, I'm your host, and I'm really excited to get started today. This is a knitting podcast. I'm coming to you live from Cairo, Egypt, where I live with my husband currently until September 15th when we move back to the States and we go back home to San Diego, California. We've got a really lovely episode for you today, but before we begin, I want to let you know you can always find me on Ravelry and Instagram as Meg311yo. 311 is my favorite band, and my name is Megan, and so I just made this new screen name handle. It's better than all the screen names I had back in the early 2000s. You know, everyone had a bad one back when AOL Instant Messenger was around, things like this. So I've upgraded to bigger, better names, and Meg311yo is the one I've chosen. So this is my knitting podcast. We've got a lot of finished objects and works in progress today, so let's get into it. Cheers, join the party. I'm drinking a Diet Dr. Pepper today because I found this at my local grocery store here in Cairo, and they sell the weirdest things at my grocery store. If you see an American soda, of course they have Coca-Cola, they have Pepsi, they have 7-Up. But those are really the only American ones that I've seen. Other ones that they have, any sort of Diet Dr. Pepper, they also had vanilla Coke, which was very strange. So I just picked up a couple random assortments of some sodas so that I could drink them and have a good time. So, what are you drinking? Let me know. So let's start off this party with what am I wearing? This is also my first finished object, and it might even be, in fact, I'm pretty confident that it is my favorite project ever. This is like a big deal, guys. I've got my jazz hands out, you know? Like, honestly, this sweater is incredible, and I'm going to tell you all about it. So this is the Galaxia Lace Top by Vera Sanin. And I want to say a couple of things. Vera Sanin. Every time I do these podcasts, I sort of forget her name, and I always have to look it up, and I always have to double check that I have the information correct, this, that. And I looked at Vera Sanin, and I'm like, that sounds so familiar, because I was flipping through Ravelry, just patterns, searching for a different pattern, actually, something I could use for 2 skeins of DK weight yarn, and I was like, okay, what do I want? And I found a Vera Sanin pattern, and I was like, Vera Sanin, that sounds so familiar. So I click on her name, and it turns out I've made 3, count them, 3 garments by Vera Sanin, and I didn't realize, after the first one, I didn't realize that the second one was the same designer. I didn't realize the third one was the same designer. So I apparently have knit 3 different garments from Vera Sanin, and I've favorited another 4 or 5 accessories from her. So I realized that this is my favorite designer. Guys, more than Joji Locatelli, more than Andrea Mowry. I know everyone's faded out right now. I haven't made a fade. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. But this woman, Vera Sanin, her patterns are amazing. And apparently they speak to me because I have made 3 garments with her patterns. And so I was really stoked to find that out because I found my designer. And I searched through all of her patterns the other day, and really, truly, a lot of them speak to me. And so I have, my first garment that I made with her was, it's called the Elda cardigan. This was my first garment I ever made, was her pattern. The next garment that I made from her is called the Summer Sweet Tea Summer, shoot, what is it? Summer Tea shirt. And it's basically like a lace weight t-shirt that you wear in the summer. Go figure. And now this, my Galaxia Lace Top, also by Vera Sanin. Who knew that I had a favorite designer and that I've knit 3 out of the 6 or 7 garments I've ever made, I've knit 3 of them from Vera Sanin. That is a high percentage, guys, so I was really excited to find that out. A little about the yarn. The yarn I used for this pattern is Cascade Ultra Pima Cotton. It is a DK weight, 100% mercerized Pima cotton yarn. And I actually just did a yarn review about this yarn, so if you're interested in what I think about it, go over to the channel. Spoiler alert, I loved this yarn, and it's super nice, and I've used it for a million projects, and I give it 5 out of 5. So that'll save you a watch if you don't want to watch my yarn review. But over there, I'll link it in the box below, but you can see sort of a more in-depth review of it. This is the colorway Wine. I love this top. So I've shown it on the last 2 episodes, but let me talk about it right now. Initially, the actual pattern is written to have this lace pattern across the front. And so the lace pattern here, I just decided to do it on the back. And that's because I had a red shirt that I loved, but it never quite fit me. And the back was open lace and the front was just plain. And so when I saw on the Galaxia lace top, I saw another woman who had done what I did here, which was basically 1 lace repeat up at the yoke, a tiny little drop down here to just add some interest, and then plain stockinette down the front. I decided to basically copy her. And so I'm gonna stand up and do a little twirly twirl. I hope it works out and that it's not super ugly and unflattering. But we'll find out, and I probably won't edit it out. So come take a look. I've got just 1 lace repeat here. This was a raglan style sweater, so of course I've got my raglan sleeves, my raglan increases, and then just stockinette down the front and lace all down the back. Take a look. So beautiful stockinette. It's got an I-cord edging along the bottom, and then the back is all this beautiful lace. And so it was a really fun project to knit. On my last episode, I hadn't actually tried it on, and so I had done an extra like 4 inches, because you separate for the sleeves, you do some inches down here, and then I realized that I hadn't tried it on. So after I podcasted last week, 2 weeks ago, I put this on like a 60-inch cord and I just tried it on, and I realized that I was a lot closer to being done than I thought. And so I only had another 6 inches to go, so I just powered through it, and I knit essentially monogamously on this sweater so that I could have it finished today. And I think it is fabulous. It fits me perfectly. It's got just enough positive ease to be really breezy and flowy on the body while not making me look larger than I am. The pattern only goes up to a size 2X. Normally I knit a 2X or 3X. I sort of have to look at the measurements and make an educated guess. For this pattern, the 2X wasn't quite big enough for what I needed. And so I actually went up a needle size to get a looser gauge on this. But then I realized that the whole back is going to be lace, and shame on me because I didn't end up, when I knit a lot of lace, it always stretches out to 1,000,000 times bigger than it could be or should be, right? But being cotton, it didn't stretch a whole lot, which was exactly what I needed. And so this garment fits me better than any garment I've ever made. It's really amazing. So, so amazing. A couple of the details. There is an I-cord bind off everywhere. So all the sleeves as well as the bottom hem have an I-cord bind off. That was the first time I'd ever done it. Easier than it looks. It does take a while because essentially you do like 2 or 3 or 4 extra stitches and then you bind off 1. So it's basically like knitting 4 rows while you're only getting this I-cord bind off. I don't know, it wasn't a big deal, but it was really fun and something new, a new technique that I had never tried. But I think it gives it a really beautiful finished look without taking away from the lace. Because I wouldn't have wanted, you know, 2x2 rib and have a little, you know, crew neck, something like that. So I think that it was actually the perfect choice. Again, Vera Sanin, man, she has the details that I really love. And so it's absolutely beautiful. The only thing is that I had initially purchased this yarn with a different project in mind. I was going to make the neon cardigan by Joji Locatelli, but I realized that I don't need a full-sleeved cardigan. I looked at the pattern again and I just wasn't feeling it, especially not with the bright red yarn, and I really wanted something different. And so I changed my mind and made this. But that meant that I had 3 3¼ skeins left over of this yarn. So I've got quite a bit left. I am thinking about projects to make with it, but I'll tell that in a different segment. So this is my Galaxia lace top. If you don't know Vera Sanin, check her out. I will in fact link her Ravelry page, like all of her designs, in the doobly-doo below, because I had no clue that I was such a fan of her knitting and such a fan of her designs until I realized that I've made 3 of her garments. Of the 7 garments I've ever made, I've made 3 Vera Sanins, guys. That is like almost 50%, and it's about as close as you can get with 7. So 3/7 of my patterns have been varisatin, and that is the lowest common denominator that I can make for that fraction. Okay, let's get into my second finished object. I finished my, oh, this is bigger than I remember. I finished my Fortunes Shawlette by Tamara Kelly. This was a crocheted shawl that I had been working on for quite some time. The yarn is Harriet Moon Fibers in their Pampa Sunrise colorway. And this is their Harriet Fine Base. It's 80% baby alpaca and 20% nylon, I found out last time. And I used up every last meter of this yarn. I literally left enough to weave in a tail, and that was it. And so I literally didn't have to cut any yarn at all, except for when I cast on, of course. I had my little tail end that I wove in. But being crochet, and especially being a crochet triangle shawl, there's no binding off. You literally continue in pattern until you're done knitting or until you're done crocheting. And I basically made it about 1/4 of the way across. It's a bottom-up shawl, so you start with, you know, 1 block, and then of course it grows. So you can't even tell at my top edge here. Here it is. This was my last block, and then you can tell that I sort of didn't even work hard to make it the same height as the other ones. Basically, I used up every meter of yarn. You can't even tell really where it is. It's there. But you can't tell where it is, and it made a really beautiful shawl. Now, on Ravelry, this is called a shawlette because it looks like it was going to be really small, but being all lace, once you block it out, this thing is gigantic. And so I knit this for myself. This is not for anybody but me. I did not end up putting the blue beads that I was talking about on the bottom. I didn't know how to add them with crochet. So with knitting, I know how to add beads because you have one small loop and you just slide the bead down either with a crochet hook or a needle and thread. Maybe I'll make a video about it. But with crochet, I have no idea how to add beads to an edge to make it look nice and be seamless, and I didn't know how to do it. So I didn't. But yeah, this thing is long. It's huge, it's long, and I think it's a really beautiful color. Obviously, I would not wear it with my bright red sweater, but I will definitely be wearing this with black and blue, and I think this is an interesting color, and I think it actually goes pretty well with my hair. And so having this dark hair right now makes me feel like I can wear just about any color. Nothing clashes. When I had red hair for 15 years of my life, not quite, maybe 12 years of my life, I had bright red hair, and I couldn't wear a lot of colors. I couldn't wear red because it would clash with my red hair. I couldn't really wear this like chartreuse green colorway just because it was clashing with my red hair, but dark hair goes with everything. Like, now I get it. And so I might not go back to bright red hair. We'll see. But this was a fun shawl to crochet. I wanted a crochet project. This one was really interesting and cool, and it went by really fast. And I was able to use up every last yard of yarn. I felt like I wouldn't have been able to do that anywhere else. And so this was really a worthwhile project for me. And I hope that I actually wear it a lot. So that's my second finished object. My next finished object / going into works in progress, because I had 3.5 skeins left over of this bright red cascade yarn, right? I decided to do what I did with my leftover cascade yarn last time I had leftover cascade yarn, and I decided to knit some knockers for charity. So this is the Knitted Knockers pattern from knittedknockers.org. If you're unfamiliar with them, they're a really wonderful charity organization that allows hand knitters to make these knitted knockers. They're essentially breast prosthetics for breast cancer survivors, and especially for those people who are unable to get reconstructive surgery for whatever reason. So for people who've had a mastectomy or a double mastectomy and who are unable to get reconstructive surgery, basically, you know, this helps them to, you know, have something on their body that looks, it gives them the look that they've got breasts, even if they don't. And so it's a really wonderful organization. They're based in America, I believe, but I know they have branches in Canada, in the UK, and they're a really great organization. I will link them in the box below, absolutely. But I made the A cup size breast. And so this is the knitted knocker, A cup, knit in my Cascade Ultra Pima cotton yarn in the wine colorway. And basically, you make a prosthetic breast, and then you send it to the charity, they will stuff it with like a polyfill, and so you leave it open in the back and sort of have this yarn that they can pull the drawstring and sort of close it up once it's all been filled, and then they will send it out to women in need. So, they will send it out to anyone in need who has had a mastectomy, who is unable to get this reconstructive surgery. And so it's a really great charity organization. This is the A cup. I also have a half object. I knit the double D cup. And so I wish that I could like stuff this somehow to show you that it looks like a triangle and it's essentially knit as a pyramid. But once you stuff it, you can round it out and it does form a natural breast shape. You know, with this being the top, gets fuller towards the bottom. It's a really perfect shape, honestly. The people who designed this are really great. But I wanted to knit this because when I was knitting the A cup, I didn't quite have enough of that quarter skein that I had left over from my sweater. And so I needed to skein up another, or cake up another skein. And so I caked up another skein. I was able to finish my first pair of knitted knockers. And then I realized, like, okay, what else am I gonna do with this skein? So I just wanna keep going. I think I'm going to knit almost all of my stash of Cascade Ultra Pima yarn and just keep making knockers. Keep making these knitted knockers, as many as I can. But I made the double D cup next, and I had made a full set. So they come in, the pattern is written for any cup size A through double D, and it gives you instructions if you would like to knit something larger, maybe as a custom order, or if you're making one for yourself. And you happen to be, you know, you want larger breasts, or if you're a bigger person and you need something proportionate for your body, they have basically ways to expand it as much as you need to. And so it's a really customizable pattern. But I knit this double D and bound it off this morning or last night. I don't know. But it's just interesting to see the different cup sizes and know that there are people out there who ask for all of these different sizes. And so back in February 2016, so way over a year ago now, I knit a full set, A through double D, and I had sent them out to the organization. For those knitted knockers, the pattern comes for an optional way to essentially make a nipple for the knocker itself. It's basically an I-cord, and then you twist it on itself and sort of tuck it in so that it doesn't pop out. And I had made all of my sizes, including the nipple for the last one. They sent me a very lovely thank you note, but they were very clear that if I ever wanted to donate again, thank you so much for donating, but if you ever wanted to donate again, most women prefer not to have the nipple, you know, sewn into their knocker. And so I decided to make all of these knockers sans nipple, with no nipple, so that hopefully this will, you know, women who would prefer not to have a nipple, they can get these ones, right? And so if you're ever interested in knitting for charity, or if you've got a little bit of extra cotton yarn left over, check out the knittedknockers.org website. They have a list of approved yarns. It's not every yarn that can be turned into a knocker. They only have high quality cotton yarns. I don't think they have any acrylic. They might have cotton acrylic blends that are accepted. But I know Cascade Ultra Pima is definitely one of the accepted yarns on their list. I've got a whole bunch extra. I love the idea of knitting for charity and for this organization. And I was thinking about it, especially being cotton, it's not a very warm yarn. And so if I wanted to make hats and scarves and gloves and socks for a homeless shelter, for example, in Michigan, I really would make that out of wool yarn. And so with cotton leftovers, really the best use that I could think of for that was these knitted knockers. And so I am definitely excited to be knitting these again. I hope to send out essentially 2.5 skeins worth of knockers to them, and I'll do my best to send as many as I can, you know, but I want to make sure I have a range of sizes. So I don't want to make just 50 A cups, you know, I want to have those double Ds represented. I want to have the C's and the B's and the D's, everything represented. And maybe I will make a larger size. Possibly, possibly not. I don't know if I would be, if I would do that, only because they made the pattern for A through double D. That's probably what they get requests for. So I don't want to go outside my boundaries and say like, oh, I'm going to make you an F size if a person doesn't want an F size, you know? I think I'm overthinking it. But I still am just going to make A through double D. So that's that. In terms of the rest of this yarn, so I have these two full skeins, and I've got this cake, which is essentially a full skein minus a double D. I don't know how many grams because I don't have a scale here in Egypt, but I don't know. Anyway, some of this yarn is designated for a very special project. If you are unaware, I am somewhat of a pattern designer. I have made 6 or 7 patterns for different amigurumi animals, so little stuffed animal plushies, and my favorite one of my own designs is our penguins. Sgt. Pepper's Penguin is the name of the pattern, and I've made, I think, 15 penguins for now, but I don't have a red one. And so I definitely am going to set aside some of this yarn for a red penguin so that I can have a red penguin. And so I will be saving some of it for myself. Call me selfish, but the fact that I'm sending, you know, any of these knitted knockers out is good. And honestly, I think I'm going to make the body of the penguin here in Egypt so that I know exactly how much yarn it takes, because I wouldn't want to have leftover and then I've sent all my knockers out, something like that. So the pattern calls for a couple different colors. I think I might knit just the body of the main body in this red color here in Egypt, and then save all the accessories and the stuffing and the eyes and the mouth and the personality. Those things really make personality. So I'll knit the body here in Egypt and then make everything else not in Egypt, so that hopefully I don't get too attached to a half-finished penguin before I can stuff it and give it eyes and a nose and a mouth and a belly and all that stuff. Oh, my penguins, I miss them so much. I have 15 of them or so, and they're all living with my mother-in-law in Edmonton, Canada, and I miss them because we used to like play with them and see them all the time. And you know, like, as much as a shawl is great, a shawl doesn't have eyes, a shawl doesn't have a beak, it doesn't like have personality, you know what I mean? And so amigurumi little animals, if you've never made one, make one, and then you'll realize why I'm so attached to my amigurumis. Okay, let's move on, because this is gonna make me sad if I just keep thinking about it. Okay, moving on in my works in progress, I'll show you something new and something fun. I've got opinions about this. This is a crocheted project, and so far, this is the beginnings of the Taiga Shawl by Joanna Lindahl. Joanna Lindahl. And it's a crocheted shawl. It actually has a really beautiful stitch pattern in like these large bands that I really like. I just am worried that it might end up being small. So I'm knitting this in Knit Picks Capra DK. It is, I believe, 85% merino and 15% cashmere. It is a dream to crochet with. It's super soft. Oh my god, it's got cashmere in it. How could you not love it? And so I have one more ball left. Yeah, 85-15, merino wool and cashmere. But there's only 123 yards in each ball. I've knit one already and maybe a quarter of this next ball, and it doesn't seem that big. The Taiga shawl has it's got this stitch pattern for a large part of it, and then at the edging it has a really beautiful sort of cascading crochet design on the end, and then it has tassels. It's a really beautiful shawl, but I'm worried that I'm not going to have enough yarn, and that scares me because I wouldn't want to order more, finish it in the States, and then have it be the wrong dye lot, and so they're not the same color. I wouldn't want them to, I wouldn't want to skimp on a really beautiful shawl because this is something I'm making for my mother-in-law. She is extra knit-worthy. She chose this color yarn, and she chose this, this yarn in particular for me to knit her something, but we didn't agree on a pattern, and so this one is sort of a surprise for her. Surprise, she watches the podcast, so like whatever, spoiler. but she might not see this episode before she comes to visit me and takes this for herself. But I think it's going to be a really beautiful shawl. I'm just worried that I won't have enough to knit to crochet the beautiful cascading border and to have the tassels. I think if there's one thing she wouldn't want, it's the tassels. And so if I find that the cascading border is taking a little bit more yarn than I expected, I'll be happy to finish that and then probably not add tassels. Or I can ask her about the tassels when she gets here. She's going to come visit us in Egypt in July, not August. So she'll be able to sort of tell me if she wants any extra things. I'm sorry, there's like so weird. So we have a heat wave here in Cairo right now, and I'm filming in my living room, so there's like windows everywhere, and all I see are like bits of feathers or cotton, something just like wafting around the wind. It looks like it's raining cotton balls. Like, it's so weird right now. There's like a quantity of white wispy things, whether they're feathers, cotton, dandelions, I don't know, but there was like a bunch for a minute. Maybe someone was like, you know, whatever this thing is outside their window, like, you know, shaking out an old rug or something, cleaning it, batting it, something, I don't know, whatever. I'm gonna stop talking now. I'm knitting this on a size H crochet hook, and it's turning out beautifully. I love the pattern. I just wish it were going to be bigger. Oh my god, it's literally raining cotton. So weird. So, I'm sorry. Being merino and cashmere, I do think it will block out nicely, and I will block it aggressively if I have to. I want this to be sort of a lighter weight shawl, or something like that. So we'll see what's going on. I just had to show you what I was looking at. It's literally raining these cotton ball things, and I think it is cotton, but look at all those fluffy white balls just going through the air. So I'm sorry that I was distracted before, but I wanted to show you this. So weird. What is that? If you know what this is, or if you've ever experienced this in your life, just let me know. Okay, let's get back to our works in progress, shall we? That was super duper weird. Okay, the next one I'm going to show you is the one that I'm probably most excited about. And this is my Emiliana shawl by Lisa Haynes. And I'm knitting this in Madeline Tosh Merino Light, which is 100% merino, single ply merino. It is not superwash, and this is in the colorway Jade and Optic. So Madeline Tosh yarns, Tosh Merino Light, Jade and Optic. I love these colors together, and I think they're making an absolutely beautiful shawl. So come take a look at this. Now, I had already knit one of these about a month ago, and 2 months ago now. I knit it for my sister out of Egyptian cotton yarn that I had purchased at a local store where I found yarn. So I had already bought these skeins when I was last in Canada, actually, and I knew that I wanted to knit a different pattern from Lisa Haynes, but another mosaic knitting pattern. I'll get into that as well. But the one that I knit for my sister out of cotton looked very different than this one does now. This one looks way better, actually, I have to say, than hers, and I think it's because it's the merino yarn. I think it's because it's wool, basically. And so here's how this pattern works. It is a triangle shawl, but it's knit corner to corner. So you start at the bottom with like 3 or 4 stitches, you knit this beautiful panel here, and then you start this mosaic knitting band. And if you've never done mosaic knitting, it is a technique of knitting, a technique of color work knitting, where you only work with 1 yarn per row. And so you're not holding yarn and carrying floats and things like this. You're actually, to get this color work effect, you're working with 1 color of yarn, and you're slipping stitches from the row below in order to carry that color up to your current row. And so you'll slip the yarn with, you'll slip your stitch with the yarn in front or with the yarn in back to get the desired texture or to get the desired look. But it really is a nice, cool way of doing color work that does not require you to carry multiple colors of yarn for the same one. So, when I was knitting my last Emiliana shawl in that Egyptian cotton yarn, I didn't have a meter edge. I didn't know how many yards or meters were in that yarn. And so I actually fell short of my color A, which for me is this white color, this color A. So I ran out of my color A for my sister's shawl at the very last row that I needed it. And so I was literally like 10 yards short of a complete shawl length. And so on this shawl, I was really paranoid and I was super worried about not having enough of my color A, because the pattern was written with Tosh Merino Light, but it said it takes every yard of this 420 yard ball of yarn. And so I wasn't sure if my gauge is even off a tiny bit. I didn't want to run out of yarn because I cannot replace this here in Egypt. So I started this mosaic band really early. You're supposed to wait until you have 150 stitches on the needle, because you basically increase on every row. You increase so that it gives this nice sort of crescent shape that will become a triangle. And so you're supposed to wait until you have like 150 stitches on the needle. But I was sitting there looking at my ball of yarn and I'm like, I need 30 grams. And I have no scale and I'm like, I'm just gonna guesstimate. And so I finished early when I was at about 126 stitches, which is way early. That's like a full 2 inches or 3 inches of just plain knitting at the end there, right? So I knit my mosaic band, my first mosaic band, and I realized that I would have more than enough of my color A. And so I actually did one additional repeat of this mosaic band. And so you can see that there's sort of these crisscross things. Normally that would finish, it would finish like here in the middle of, it would finish in the middle of one of these repeats. So I added an additional full repeat, and I actually think that it proportions the mosaic band really well. And so I'm going to do the same for the second mosaic band, which is essentially opposite, because right here the green is more the dominant color. For my second mosaic band, the white will be the dominant color, and then you continue with a band of just green. It's a really beautiful shawl. I'll let you know, you'll see it as it comes along, but this is absolutely my favorite thing to knit on right now. It's exciting, it's fun, it's different, it's cool, it's easy. The mosaic is easy. You do have to watch your stitch count, and you do have to sort of like keep track of what you're doing, but it's not hard. It's a much easier technique than Fair Isle or Intarsia. Oh, I've dabbled in both of those, but I choose not to dabble anymore because I'm not very good at them. But that's it. So I will have plenty of this leftover jade, which I plan to use maybe for a beekeeper's quilt, but we'll see what really happens when we get back to the States. But I probably will be bringing a substantial amount of this yarn left over back to the States. I actually might add tassels to this project instead of to my taiga shawl, just because I think it would be really cool to have like a green tassel on this white end, and a white tassel on the middle part for this mosaic part, and then a white tassel on the other end as well. I think that would be a good way to use up any additional optic or this white color yarn that I have, but we'll see. I'm not sure about that. Let's move on to my last work in progress. This work in progress here is my socks. And I initially started these socks with the pattern in mind of the toe-up socks with a twist. I'm still planning to use that as a base, and it's essentially a toe-up sock pattern with a heel flap and gusset, so not a short row heel, which doesn't fit me super well. I really wanted that heel flap and gusset. But as mentioned in my last episode, I was originally knitting them vanilla, and they were just way too loose around the around my foot. They were going to be completely gaping, and I was just making vanilla socks. So I ripped back what I had. I kept the 60 stitches instead of 64 stitches, which I was knitting on, and I decided to add sort of this blueberry waffle stitch to it. But I don't like the blueberry waffle stitch. I don't like the blueberry waffle stitch. I don't think it looks really great. Maybe it's just my yarn. I think it looks nice on the pictures for the sample that was knit up for this, you know, for this sock pattern, fine. But I'm just not feeling it for myself. And so I will be ripping these out. I don't know what I'm going to do. If you have any suggestions for a stitch pattern that gives some negative ease to socks, so something maybe ribbed, but with maybe, oh, maybe I can put a cable on here. I want something that is going to make it a little tight against my foot, that is not the blueberry waffle stitch, and maybe is like a nice stitch that I'm going to like better than this. Because here in Egypt, this is my last bit of sock yarn about the yarn. This, the blue color here, is Malabrigo sock yarn in their colorway Wales Road. The purple down here is Sweet Georgia Tough Love sock in their grape jelly colorway. I knit a full cardigan out of this and just used the extras for, I'm only going to have enough for toes and cuffs. I'm not going to do heels. But this Wales Road colorway is the last sock yarn that I have in Egypt. So this is my last pair of socks that I'm going to knit here. And so I really want a pattern that I'm going to love and something that would show up well on dark colors like this. I don't know if a cabled pattern would be the best unless it's a big chunky cable, which I could do. But I'm worried that I wouldn't be able to see any small, 1x1 cables or mock cables, things like that. So if you happen to know of a really cool textured stitch pattern that adds negative ease, i.e. it makes the sock a little bit more narrow or it brings it in so that it stretches open with your foot, please let me know in the comments below, because I'm a new sock knitter. I still don't consider myself really a sock knitter, even though I've made 3 pairs since I've been here in Egypt. I don't consider myself a huge sock knitter, and so I don't know the best patterns and the best stitch combinations to give it negative ease, positive ease, whatever I want. I really don't know these things yet, and so if you've got any suggestions or helpful hints, please let me know. I definitely will be ripping this back. It's possible I will rip the toe back to 56 stitches as well, only because they seem to be coming out really big, even with this stitch pattern. So maybe it's the size needles that I'm using. I'm using size 1.5. I think that's 2.25 or 2.5 millimeters. 1.5 needles. It's just not turning out the way I need them to. And so when I have this beautiful yarn that I saved specifically for myself, I made a pair of socks for my friend, and I saved enough for a pair of socks for myself so that I could do just this, make a sock for myself. And I really want something special and nice, and something that's going to show off this beautiful yarn. So please spam me with your suggestions. I will absolutely love you for it. So you can either send me a message on Ravelry at Meg311yo, or you can put it in the comments below, whatever is easiest for you. But I would love to see what patterns you've got for socks, because right now I'm thinking about just sitting on these socks and not doing anything with them. And that's dangerous, because as a non-sock knitter, if I leave my socks for a long time, they never come back. I just don't do anything with them, and then I'll find them in a closet a year and a half later, and I'm like, oh, those, and I frog them, or I don't do anything with them, and I just put them back. Because I'm really a bad sock knitter. I'm not good at this sort of thing. That's all I have for you today. Thank you for watching this shorter episode of the Knitters Party podcast. Again, my name is Megan. You can find me on Instagram and Ravelry as Meg311yo, and I hope to see you on this channel again. That's it for me. Have a good day, guys. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.